Hello and welcome to Business Daily, coming to you live from Seoul. I'm Lee Ji-yoon. Before we get started with our day's top business stories, let's get a quick look at what you can expect from us in the latter half of our program. Stock markets in Asia are rallying, and Korea's indices are part of this boom. We take a look at growth potential and what's driving this surge. White hat hackers in the face of growing threats from cyber attacks, Korea is busying itself with breeding an army of online warriors. After 18 years since its introduction, a global nuclear liability pact overseen by the IAEA has taken effect. The Convention on Supplementary Compensation for Nuclear Damage was first initiated by the U.S. following Ukraine's Chernobyl accident in 1986. It is meant to modernize an existing global legal framework and establish an international fund for victims of nuclear incidents. So far, the CSC has 19 signatory states, including Japan and Ukraine, and 6 countries have ratified the pact. Banks in Korea are being inundated with inquiries about equity funds as individuals eye better investment opportunities. Sources in the banking industry say interest started rising when the Kospi crossed the 2,000 mark. Korea's benchmark index, like its counterparts in the region, has been booming. It surpassed the 2,100 mark this week for the first time in 44 months. Record low interest rates also positioned Koreans to search for better ways to grow their money than through conventional savings accounts. Korea's 2 largest car makers, Hyundai and Kia Motors, have posted record high sales for the month of March in the European market, with both automakers seeing a rough 10% growth. Hyundai Motors sold around 48,000 cars last month, up 12% year-on-year, while sales for its affiliate Kia Motors also increased by about 10% compared to the same time last year, selling roughly 44,000 vehicles. Industry watchers say the strategic placement of cars is specifically designed to suit the tastes of local consumers played a big part in their performances. Phone scams to harvest financial data known as voice phishing continues to be a menacing problem here in Korea. So regulators are zoning in on illegal bank accounts to crack down on voice phishing. Our Eunice Kim has the details.
A man walks up to an ATM machine with a hat covering his face and a bag slung over his shoulder. He's there to move money sent by voice phishing victims. This 32-year-old in 1 month's time had transferred a sum of nearly $100,000 to a crime ring's account. Financial losses from such organized voice phishing incidents are on the rise. According to data from the Korean National Police Agency, there were more than 7,600 reported cases last year, incurring damages of more than $88 million. Also growing is the number of illegally created bank accounts used in the crimes, jumping to nearly 45,000 in the same year. This refers to accounts in which the actual user is different from the name stated on the bank book. Financial authorities believe that reining in such illegal accounts will help eradicate voice phishing crimes by taking away the means to move and store the illicit funds.
People who knowingly aid in the creation of such bank accounts will be reported to an investigative agency and listed with the Korea Federation of Banks and banned from financial activities for a period of 5 years.
Regulators are also in the process of strengthening deterrence to identify such crimes, including requiring face-to-face transactions on dormant bank accounts and doubling the cash award for reporting criminal activity. Eunice Kim, Business Daily.
And with hacking becoming a more common crime nowadays, both personal and classified government information are constantly at risk of being leaked. To fight this, Korea is breeding an army of so-called white hat hackers. Our Lee Ji-young tells us more.
$3.2 billion. This is how much Korea saw in economic damages from cyber attacks last year. Double the cost of natural disasters, according to market research firm International Data Corporation. This is why the government has been working on finding ways to combat hacking and boost its cybersecurity by nurturing white hat hackers. CodeGate, also known as a Hackers Olympics, is an international hack defense contest and IT security conference. It has been organized by the Ministry of Science, ICT, and Future Planning since 2008.
With hacking competitions like CodeGate, our mission is to nurture white hat hackers. We plan to use them to protect the information industry in the future.
These ethical hackers use their skills to improve security by exposing vulnerabilities before malicious hackers, a need that appears to be surging in the country. The anti-hacking competition, which took place in Seoul on April 7th, drew in some 5,000 people from around the world. The sheer size of the event exceeded that of America's largest and longest-running hack conference, DEF CON. Korea has also been hosting global IT security expositions, while the country's military organizes annual hackathons to better train its troops against cyber breaches. As the world becomes even more connected through the internet, movements to nurture future cyber warriors will also gain more prominence. Lee Ju-young, Business Daily.
Major stock markets around the world have roared to life recently. The Kospi is no exception as it climbed above the 2,100 line this week for the first time in more than 3 years. We take an in-depth look at the stock market boom.
A rally in stock markets around the world. European markets hit record highs this week as a weaker euro boosted exports, while the median New York Stock Exchange stock is currently at a post-war record high in terms of price-to-earning ratio. Over a dozen of major markets around the world have all been enjoying a boost, and shining the brightest among them are countries in Asia. Japanese shares scaled 15-year peaks last week, while the benchmark for Chinese stocks climbed to yet another all-time high earlier this week. And Korea, which lagged behind in its neighboring countries in terms of growth, is also starting to see a boom in its stock market. Will this market trend continue? Let's find out.
And to tell us more about this, we're now joined by Professor Shin Se-don of Sookmyung Women's University. Thanks for coming in today, Professor.
My pleasure.
All right, so last week, Korea's benchmark stock index hit its highest level in 3.5 years. Considering that Korea has been lagging behind other countries, what do you think of this latest boost? What comes behind it?
Well, it was quite a surprise in the sense that, the stock price in Korea, Kospi especially, has been caught in the middle between 1,800 and 2,100 for more than 44 months. And finally, Kospi was able to break the 2,100 barrier. That was first the surprise. And the second surprise is that every major forecast institutions has been lowering the economic growth rate for Korea, especially IMF lowered the growth rate for this year from 3.7% to 3.3%. So real economy seems to be taking off, but all of a sudden, Korean stock markets start picking up. So that was a surprise.
Well, I mean, like we've been saying, major stock markets around the world have been seeing this upward momentum, then especially 3 Asian countries, China, Japan, and Korea. So what's behind all this?
Well, there's some similarities. Japan, China, and Korea all suffering from very slow economic growth. But the other 2 countries like China and Japan, because of their very active monetary policy and government policy, especially the Abenomics in Japan, the stock price in Japan has been soaring for the last 2 years, almost 100%. Especially 2013 and the first part of the 14. And China has been doing similarly in 2013, and performance in China has been a little, laggish in 2014, but, starting from 2015, because of the active government policy, the Chinese stock markets is beginning to, but in Korea, the monetary policy has been very, I would say, retrogressive and very sluggish in implementing a very active monetary policy like that in Japan or China. So that's why Korean stock market has been pretty slow for the last couple of years.
All right. So, I mean, we have some numbers to back that up, too. I mean, the Kospi posted a mere 3% rise last week compared to 3 years ago, while Japan's Nikkei shot up 108%, and China's Shanghai Composite jumped to 73% over the same period. Then, what are some reasons behind this?
Well, as I said, the government policy, especially monetary policy for those two countries, China and Japan, is very active. But in Korea, the Bank of Korea has been very reluctant to act very actively in the monetary policy, especially the changing the base rate. And of course, the Bank of Korea has lowered the base rate a number of times in 2014 and this year, and expect that to be continued down the road. So we will say that the reason the Korean stock market has been pretty sluggish compared to other countries in Asia, I think that has something to do with the monetary policy.
All right. Well, but then as great as this boost in the stock market may sound, the market is always full of surprises, right? So I guess some are worried that this growth trend might fizzle out soon and the bust of the boom might come. So what do you think of that?
Well, there are three factors. First, I think is the U.S. policy, as long as the rate policy is concerned. And many expected the U.S., the Federal Reserve will lower the rate, raise the rate down the road, but there seems to be confusion regarding so. First key factor is whether U.S., the Federal Reserve will raise the rate when and how fast and how much. And second factor is, first quarter export performance in Korea has been, astonishingly low, in the negative 2% for the first quarter. So for Korean stock market, I think the export performance down the road in 2015 will be the key factor whether the stock price will keep rising or continue to fall. And number three is, I think potentially there will be another debt crisis or financial crisis in other part of the world, especially something like a Greek disaster in 2011. And so there are a number of countries, having a kind of a potential risk, especially Brazil or some other Latin American countries. So U.S. policy, Korean export performances, and external, debt crisis, something like that, that will determine whether a Korean stock market will, continue rising during 2015.
All right, so I guess we'll have to keep a close eye on the external factors down the line, how it will affect the Kospi.
Definitely.
All right, thanks for coming in
you.
today, Professor.
Okay.
All right, that wraps it up for now. Hope you enjoyed it. We'll be back here at the same time tomorrow. Until then, bye-bye.